Hello everyone. For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. To begin today, a Telesur exclusive. New documents leaked by Edward Snowden have shown extensive spying by the U.S. National Security Agency on Venezuela state oil company PDVSA. Now obtained exclusively by Telesur in partnership with The Intercept. The documents reveal a wide spying operation in which regular Venezuelans were also targeted. We're going to bring you more information on this story in just a few minutes. But first, French President François Hollande says he will arrange a meeting between the Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. President Barack Obama. President Hollande will visit Washington next week to meet with President Obama, but he will also travel to Moscow to meet with President Putin. Hollande expressed his will to bring both leaders together in a meeting to discuss terrorism. As the French president explained, despite tensions between both nations, the common thread should be global terrorism.
I know very well that every country does not have the same interests, nor the same ideas, nor necessarily the same allies. But what's at stake here is putting an end to, destroying an army that threatens the entire world, and not only some countries more than others.
Meanwhile, Russia says that the West has to drop its demands to oust Syrian President Bashar al-Assad if it genuinely wants an international coalition against Islamic State militants.
I hope the change in the position of our Western colleagues, which unfortunately has only come about as a result of terrible acts of terror, will spread to other Western partners. That the stance that the real battle with Islamic State can only be resolved once the fate of Bashar al-Assad is clear. That this position will be put aside.
And as we mentioned earlier, documents obtained by Telesur in partnership with The Intercept have revealed extensive NSA spying on state oil company PDVSA here in Venezuela. Now, the United States National Security Agency, the NSA, has been spying on state oil company PDVSA. According to those documents, they were leaked by whistleblower Edward Snowden, and the U.S. Embassy in Caracas carried out the operation. Now, apparently, this NSA network operating within U.S. embassies worldwide are called the F6 group. And for the absolute latest now on this revelation, we turn to our studios here in Caracas. We're joined by our special correspondent, Isabel Fimbo. Isabel, thanks for joining us. What do we know right now? What else do we know about those leaked documents? What was contained in them, and how deep was this spying into PDVSA?
Well, hi Cody. What we know so far is that the NSA gained access to the internal communication of Venezuela's state oil company PDVSA. Now, they were able to get access to the contact profiles of 10,000 of the employees, and that's including the usernames and passwords of 900, including the then president of the company, Rafael Ramirez. Now, they were also looking to get information about the ongoing case with ExxonMobil, which was happening at the time.
Now, do we know if it was only limited to PDVSA?
No. Well, what we know is that it was done in conjunction with the U.S. Embassy in Caracas, and it also targeted Venezuelan civilians, and up to around 150,000 civilians work for PDVSA, and all of these people were made vulnerable in this espionage attack.
And of course, currently here in Venezuela, Venezuelans are preparing for elections, Isabel, coming up soon. Do we know what type of impacts this revelation could possibly have on the elections?
Well, what this revelation is likely to do is to strengthen President Nicolas Maduro's case about the US destabilization attempts against the government here in Venezuela. Now, and as I mentioned earlier, there's around 150,000 people here work for the PDVSA. So Venezuelans are going to be angry about this because this is civilians targeted in this NSA attack. Now, the government here gains its biggest support in its policies and its arguments about foreign intervention. So this is likely going to swing a little bit of support in favor of the government right now.
All right, Isabel, thanks so much. We know the government always gets its highest approval ratings, especially in situations like these. So we will wait and see what impact it could have on the elections. Isabel, thanks so much.
Thanks, Cody.
Moving on now, a new round of peace talks is underway in Havana as the Colombian government and the FARC rebels try to put an end to the country's armed conflict. The FARC guerrillas urge the Colombian government to reach a final agreement before the current March 23rd deadline. Through a statement by the FARC leader, Timochenko, the rebels said they were willing to speed up negotiations. However, President Santos avoided referring directly to the offer.
I offered them that we could resolve every detail before December 31st to declare a bilateral ceasefire from January onwards. They said that December 16th will be better so that Colombians could enjoy Christmas free of armed conflict, to which I responded that I was willing to, but we still need to advance in the negotiations.
Another big story in Latin America, Argentina is set to hold a second round of presidential elections on Sunday. Now, the most recent polls there show that Daniel Scioli and Mauricio Macri are technically tied. However, around 60% of the voters say they have not decided for whom they will vote. Analysts believe that the volatile voter will define Sunday's election. Current President Cristina Fernandez urged Argentinians to vote thinking of their collective rights.
In the name of all those things, and in the exercise of your democratic will, do not defend a government. Defend your rights. When you put in that ballot, your rights are also going into the ballot box.
In Mexico now, the families of the disappeared 43 Ayotzinapa students and the activists that support them argue that a new media campaign in conjunction with repressive security policies are being implemented to delegitimize their movement for truth and justice in the case that has been ongoing for over a year. Our correspondent Clayton Kahn now reports.
Denied access to the press conference behind this wall in a downtown Mexico City luxurious hotel, this group of representatives from different social organizations say they are present to express their solidarity with the parents of the disappeared 43 Ayotzinapa students.
We are here because the parents called on us to come and boycott this activity by the Citizens Council, which is defaming the parents of the students and the group of independent experts.
The press conference, organized by a right-wing think tank, lays out a new argument that an independent investigation on Ayotzinapa being carried out by respected experts from the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights is a left-wing conspiracy.
The Inter-American Commission of Human Rights and its group of experts, as well as the leftist propaganda machine in Mexico, have tried to systematically discredit the Iguala massacre investigation carried out by the Attorney General's office.
While the think tank's arguments are based on little evidence, the activists outside, who were later removed by security, argue that it is important to counter these new claims so as to not further confuse public opinion and ultimately damage possibilities of finding truth and justice in the Ayotzinapa case.
I will not allow them to come and say that the experts are doing something wrong, or that the Citizens Council denigrates this movement, which for me is sacred, because they are parents who have had their children torn away from them. And what a disgrace that in this country there is no dignified institutions that can say where the 43 Ayotzinapa students are.
Meanwhile, over the weekend in the state of Guerrero, where the tragic events of Ayotzinapa occurred, classmates, parents, and supporters of the missing youth protested, claiming that the new state government, as well as federal authorities, seek to criminalize and limit the legitimacy of their movement.
I think there is a launch of hardening policies from the state and federal authorities that are not just against Ayotzinapa, but also against other social organizations such as the CNTE, but that is primarily focused on us.
Yet, an increase in violent police repression against classmates and parents of the 43 disappeared, as well as what they say is an increase in media slur campaigns against their movement or the independent investigation, will not impede their organizing and demand for truth and justice in the case. Clayton Kahn del Sur, Mexico.
A migrant crisis is looming in Central America as Cuban migrants are trying to reach the United States. Now, about 1,600 Cubans are stranded in Costa Rica after Nicaragua decided to close its borders. The Honduran government is also requesting a solution. The Costa Rican government revealed that conversations between Central American nations and Cuba are underway. And as Cuban migrants arrive in Central America, Honduras is debating a controversial budget, almost with no discussion at all. For more now, we turn to our correspondent Gerardo Torres in Central America.
An alliance inside the National Congress between the ruling National Party and the Conservative Liberal Party will allow the approval of a budget for next year that is focused on defense, security, and the payment of the external debt, not for economic development or social programs.
If we analyze the expenses, there is an exaggerated assignation in the increase of budget for defense and security, which combined are now 31% of the whole budget. There's also an increase in security of 53% and a 29% increase in defense. However, if you look at the sectors, such as health and education, their increase are much lower, which shows a wrong priority in the distribution of funds.
The payment of the external debt means at least 30% of budget, and the assistance programs coordinated by the president are of at least 30% of the budget. This leaves only 10% for everything else, guaranteeing a precarious situation for the public service that will need new loans to barely face the basic needs. These new loans will increase the debt and continue the vicious circle. This is why many have demanded a more profound evaluation of the budget.
This is a standardized process that has been going on for many years, and it's related to these authoritarian processes in which the people is not consulted about the most important decisions on a macro-social level. These decisions are taken in an arbitrary way without people's participation. For instance, for the approval of the country's general budget, citizens should be aware of the need for their participation in this kind of processes, both in democratic processes and the economic and social well-being development process.
Honduras conservative forces control the government and Congress, and they will now approve a budget that will continue the current militarization and impoverishment process that the country lives now. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
Efforts to detain terror suspects in France ended with 2 people killed after French police and soldiers raided the neighborhood of Saint-Denis. Now, the neighborhood in the heart of Paris was home to a terror cell, evidently. During the raid of the apartment, a woman blew herself up and a man was killed amid a gun battle. 7 people were arrested during the raid, despite initial speculation. Abdelhamid Amakwad, the mastermind of the Paris attacks, was not detained during the raids. For a third consecutive day, French warplanes targeted the Islamic State Syria stronghold in Raqqa. According to a monitoring group in Syria, both French and Russian airstrikes in the northern city have killed at least 33 Islamic State militants in the last 72 hours. The attacks were on weapon depots, barracks, and checkpoints. Dozens of IS fighters were wounded. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is continuing his crackdown on U.S.-based opposition leader Fethullah Gulen. The Turkish authorities took over the Kaynak Holding, which is a holding company linked to Gulen. As a result, 19 companies, a foundation, and a union have been taken over by court-appointed trustees. The group is accused of financing Gulen's organization, which Turkey regards as a terror group aiming to overthrow the government. Despite Myanmar's historic poll victory by the opposition party, NLD, fresh fighting has broken out between the military and rebel groups there. The fighting has forced hundreds of civilians to flee. In the past month, thousands of people have been displaced. Thousands of people have been displaced by ongoing clashes between the Shan State Army North and government forces. Displaced citizens are urging the government, the new government, to find a peaceful solution with the armed groups.
We want to live peacefully. We do not want to hear any gunshots. I dare not to go back because we are so frightened.
Malaysia's prime minister has both confirmed and condemned the beheading of a Malaysian hostage by Abu Sayyaf, an armed Islamist group affiliated to the Islamic State that operates from the southern Philippines.
We actually got confirmation that the person was actually killed by the criminals.
And what is the reason for the execution? Was there an attempt to rescue this?
Yes, 2 Malaysians were kidnapped earlier this year, and there was efforts being done to basically rescue them. We managed to get one hostage out, but in this case we were unfortunately unable to retrieve the other one.
In Tunisia now, police have foiled a new plot to attack at the beach resort of Suisse, where 38 people were killed in June. According to the Interior Ministry, more than a dozen suspected Islamists believed to have trained in Syria and Libya were arrested. Now, Tunisia is the biggest exporter of jihadis, with at least 3,000 of its nationals fighting in Iraq and Syria. The arrests are part of one of the country's most significant counterterrorism operations. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari has ordered the arrest of his predecessor's security advisor, Sambo Dasuki, for allegedly stealing $2 billion. Dasuki is accused of awarding phantom contracts to buy 12 helicopters, 4 fighter jets, and ammunition, which was part of the much-needed equipment meant for the military to fight against Boko Haram Islamist militants. Now, Dasuki denies those allegations. In northeastern Okinawa, hundreds of demonstrators gathered outside the U.S. Marine Corps' Camp Schwab to protest against the relocation of another U.S. military base to be installed there. Some of the protesters gathered at the main entrance to the camp for a while, decrying the U.S. military presence in Japan. Okinawa's present governor has also vowed to put a stop to the project. A wide variety of issues were raised by world leaders during the APEC summit, which kicked off in the Philippines. Now, U.S. President Barack Obama delivered a speech centered on climate change and the need for taking action, while the finance ministers of the APEC nations agreed to set measures which would boost the economy while implementing sustainable development practices. Security was tight and highly visible at the Vatican as some 20,000 pilgrims gathered in St. Peter's Square to listen to Pope Francis during his general audience. Following the attacks in Paris, Italy is currently on a level 2 alert. Police checked bags as people arrived for the audience, and plainclothes officers were mingled within the crowd to guarantee the safety of the pilgrims. Well, this Wednesday is a sad day for rugby fans all around the world as New Zealand star Jonah Lomu has passed away. The All Blacks legend suffered a serious kidney disease which finally took his life at the young age of 40 years old. His death came unexpected as he had been in Dubai and was arriving back from London on Thursday. The All Blacks will pay tribute to their late star. Tibetan filmmaker Pema Tesden's latest film, Tharlo, is making plenty of headlines in Asia. Now, Tharlo is among the 5 nominees in both the Best Feature and the Best Director categories at the Taiwan's Golden Horse Film Festival. The film follows a shepherd as he travels from the pastures to the city to get a photo for his government identity card. After meeting a hairdresser, Tharlo questions his austere existence. Well, there's a new craze in Mexico. Check this out. Mini pet pigs. Would you go for a pet pig? Pig ownership there has increased as more and more people are opting for them over dogs. But in a country that's better known for its love affair with pork, their status as pets is continuing to surprise there. I guess they're sort of cute, but do they get bigger than that? That's my question. Other parts of the world have also accepted mini pigs as pets, but it's a new thing in Latin America, especially there in Mexico. The pets there sell for as much as $1,800, which makes owning the animals sort of a status symbol. That's interesting. I think I'll just stick with a dog, a cat, maybe a fish. We have plenty more on all of those stories and others that we reported on our website, telesurtv.net/English. Also, check us out on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you back here in just a few hours.